for everybody out there, keep in mind that when y'all bought this land, you were 60 years old, right?
61, 62, yeah, about
So-
61, somewhere in that.
So
Between
if you-
60 and 62.
So if you think you're too old to go and chase that dream or do what you've always wanted to do, 60 years old, and now here he is, 80 years old, flipping troughs, taking care of cattle. That's a feat. That's a feat. We think we can't do anything past a certain age, but
That's a photo of me when I was growing up in Chicago.
okay.
And I probably was somewhere around 6 years old or so.
What's going through your head when you're sitting on that horse?
Well, the picture, the juxtaposition of the two pictures is, that's me at 6 years old, dressed up as a cowboy, and the guy comes around with the pony, and you got your chaps and your hat and all the rest of it, and that's me at about 61 or 62 or whatever in Wyoming, fulfilling a childhood dream.
Wow.
And this is a fulfillment of a childhood dream.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Adam, and this is my wife, Leslie. We have 6 kids. For the past 10 years, we lived in a big farmhouse and homesteaded on 5 acres. Now, we're living in a 30-foot RV, traveling the nation to tell the stories of the 21st century American homesteader. A grassroots movement is happening in America. Average folks like you and me are returning to the land and rediscovering what it means to grow their own food. We are here to tell their stories. So join us on this journey. If you like what you see, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. In last week's episode, we got to visit Josh, otherwise known as Stony Ridge Farmer. We saw how he's using regenerative farming techniques to restore his land. It was amazing to see the payoff of these practices. During the time we spent with him, we realized it's people like Josh that are helping to restore the nation, inch by inch. We are in beautiful central North Carolina. We are at ChatCo Cattle Company at Tangled Oaks, and they have some amazing stories to share with us. And guys, if we get to introduce you to Pineywoods cattle and all sorts of cool things. Bruce, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, welcome to Tangled Oaks, ChatCo Cattle Company. We raise Pineywoods cattle, and both for breeding stock and for butchering and meat. And we're excited to share what we do. We're a small producer, and we haven't been doing it very long, but we have learned a lot and want to share that with you.
Awesome. We're going to jump in some side-by-sides and take a trip down the road here, and can't wait for it.
We'll start talking while we go.
Cool. Let's do it.
That's a photo of me when I was growing up in Chicago.
Okay.
And I probably was somewhere around 6 years old or so.
What's going through your head when you're sitting on that horse?
Well, the picture, the juxtaposition of the two pictures is, that's me at 6 years old, dressed up as a cowboy, and the guy comes around with the pony, and you got your chaps and your hat and all the rest of it, and that's me at about 61 or 62 or whatever in Wyoming, fulfilling a childhood dream.
Wow.
And this is a fulfillment of a childhood dream.
Yeah.
Is really what it is that I never lost that interest in doing this. And so it's
and then at 60, you said 60 is when you started this place, right? Around 60? Okay.
Yeah.
So shortly after that picture was taken?
We had bought the land and in 2004, and we didn't know what we wanted to put on it. And when we went to Wyoming and worked cattle on horseback, after doing that, I knew exactly what we wanted to put on it. We didn't know which breed, but we knew we wanted to put cattle on it.
Wow.
And so,
then you did how many weeks in Wyoming there in that picture?
Probably it was really about 10 days.
Okay.
But we were, it was an interesting experience, because we really were, this operation was, Marge had found it. It was a place where this woman ran a horse ranch, and she had gotten with the cattle ranchers and said she could supply up to I guess 12 riders, horses, and 3 wranglers. And to do whatever they needed done. We went in September, and our job was to round up cattle so that they could be brought into the corrals and shipped to actually California, lower country, out of Wyoming.
Wow.
Before the 1st of October.
Wow.
And so we were in the saddle from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day.
Wow.
It was a major change from my lifestyle as an attorney.
Yeah.
And but it was a great deal of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. All right, so I'm gonna pull this one in.
Okay.
Keep it coming. Okay. And that's just paranoia.
Yeah, no, I got you. You don't want your cattle getting out.
Once they get out, then my day is over.
Yeah. You got to call the cowboys.
Yeah, that's when, there aren't enough. You got to start catching.
Yeah, cowboys around here. I guess you're the cowboy.
I'm the cowboy, and we then have to talk them into coming back.
Sure.
Usually that's an alfalfa bucket, but so now they're not going to get out. This is an alley, and the way that this alley is set up is from the corral, they can use this alley to get over here, to graze these paddocks and go around number 1. This is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, Perry paddock on the other side of the trees, and then we have the oak grove, 5, 6, the crabgrass field, 8, and then we're adding as we go paddocks. Gotcha. And that we know which one we're operating at a time. This one is in recovery, but we'll be soon we'll be mowing and reseeding. And I'll be seeding in the beginning of September.
Okay, and what do you seed with?
Well, we'll be seeding with triticale and festolium for the winter, and we'll add where we don't have red clover already well seeded in. We'll add some red clover probably in areas where it's not strong. And initially, this farm was in cotton. If you go back a couple hundred years, this was in cotton.
That's what my buddy said. Around here was a lot of tobacco and cotton, right?
Right. And then it became dairy.
Okay.
After the cotton left and all of that, this became dairy country. And then when dairy, it really lost favor because of the government regulations and all the rest of it became very expensive. Then it became beef cattle.
Got it.
And now we're in beef cattle and a variety of other things. You'll see corn and you'll see a number of different things, but by and large, this area is great for beef cattle. Okay, they may or may not follow us. They're curious as to what's going on. Okay. Okay. Back there behind that tree, the red and white, who's looking around with the orange tag.
Big boy, yeah.
Okay. The orange tag signifies a bull or a steer, a male.
Okay.
Yellow is a female.
What's the rhyme or reason with how large these pastures are, Bruce?
I bought this, it was 12 acres, and I haven't split it up yet.
Okay.
And
Y'all have a total of 100 acres?
I have a total of 125. 115 are contiguous.
And this little poly wire will keep them out, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's electric.
Okay. And
Okay.
that's high electric.
That's hot.
So, Bruce, you rotationally graze all of these cows.
Yes.
Supplement with some grasses.
Well, okay, our cattle are 100% grass-fed. So they only get grass, alfalfa pellets, which are grass, and hay, kelp, which is basically just vegetation from the sea. Mm-hmm. It has a lot of nutritional values and minerals.
Okay.
And that's all they get.
You were a lawyer.
Yeah, I practiced law for 43 years.
And Marge was in technology.
She worked for IBM.
And then now y'all are here on a cattle ranch. You wouldn't think a lawyer would switch over and jump into cattle. And there's a reason. I mean, we talked about you being, we looked at that picture, and 6 years old, you're thinking about being a cowboy, right?
Everybody at 6 years old in the 50s thought they were going to be a cowboy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Hopalong Cassidy and John Wayne, I don't think I ever lost that. That got embedded somewhere and in a file. I got diverted into other things, orchids for a while and all of that, but I never really lost that interest, kind of tucked away, and we did what a lot of people in my world did. We bought into the subdivision and built the McMansion and all the rest of the stuff, and I had an 800 square foot greenhouse and raised orchids and did a lot of things, but I got bored, and so we started looking for land. And we laugh about it now. We started looking for 5 acres and a pond so I could water my orchids with pond water. That exponentially grew in size because we couldn't put the two together, a piece of land and a pond. And I had a good friend who had grown up in Chatham County, North Carolina, and he had a relative, and so he started helping me look, and we came out and looked at a piece of land that we thought we found, and he went out with us and showed us the error of our ways with that piece of land, and brought us out here. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this much land? But we have ultimately bought it, and we're very fortunate because now land prices have just gone through the sky. But so we jumped into it, and then the ultimate question is, what are we going to do with it? And the childhood thoughts started hearkening back up.
Keep in mind, when y'all bought this land, for everybody out there, keep in mind that when y'all bought this land, you were 60 years old, right?
61, 62, yeah, about 61, somewhere in that, between 60 and 62.
So if you think you're too old to go and chase that dream or do what you've always wanted to do, 60 years old, and now here he is, 80 years old, flipping troughs, taking care of cattle. That's a feat. That's a feat. We think we can't do anything past a certain age, but
and when I was standing out here, this land nothing had been done to the land when we looked at it when I was 60, 61, whatever it was, and it was really overgrown, and I thought about just what you brought up. You're 60, 61 years old, and you're going to start doing this now, and I.
You got trees all.
You couldn't walk here.
Yeah.
You couldn't be here. We couldn't be here. The house couldn't be there. Yeah. It was all 15 years plus of undergrowth everywhere. That that where you're looking out there, the neighbor had cattle and had grazed them out there. That's the only thing that kept that open.
Wow.
All this was not open, you know, and so my wife and I, we decided, okay, are we going to do this? And while we were standing out here, I looked at her and she looked at me, and I looked at my friend and said, okay, let's make an offer. And we were very fortunate to go ahead and make that decision. Then we spent 7.5 years, starting with a little 16-inch chainsaw and a weed whacker and a string trimmer and a couple of folding chairs and a cooler, and came out and started clearing by hand for 7.5 years.
Wow.
All the stuff. And then we, eventually within a year, we bought a small tractor, and we just kept on for 7.5 years working on it, and then started fencing and looking for what we were going to put on it. We thought about goats, and we thought about sheep, and we didn't think long about sheep or goats. And then we started taking trips to look at different breeds of cattle, and found the Livestock Conservancy and went out to look at Pineywoods, and eventually decided that that was the breed that we wanted.
Wow.
I loved the horns, I loved their history,
Yeah.
and so that's what we did.
Wow.
Right?
That's why, we didn't have a ranch hand until until last October.
Right.
Here they come. So come on. All right. Now, come on. That's Calico. So see, she's brindle.
Yeah. See that.
Apart.
Beautiful. What a hide.
Huh?
That's a beautiful hide.
Isn't that a beautiful hide? Talking about your hide. Better mind yourself.
What spurred the idea to do a healthy option for meat?
I think it was. It's our own personal prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of research.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say a lot of research, we didn't spend months in the library reading stuff. We had grown up with store-bought meat,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew the difference. I grew up hunting, and I knew the difference between what wild game tasted like and what store-bought beef tasted like, and all of those things. And we just made a decision that we wanted to raise natural beef the way it was supposed to be from our point of view. And we've been very, very pleased with the product. Now, it costs us more because we have to spend more time raising our cattle before we actually process it than if we ran them into the barn and fed them grain and corn and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But and this is just an anecdote, and I don't claim any great scientific research on the side. I happen to believe it, and I know that an awful lot of people agree with us. And my doctor, who said, basically, that animal over there is as healthy as you can get from a standpoint of the fat and all the what you're getting on your plate. Mm-hmm. is really good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of consumers don't understand the difference between, because a lot of people out there aren't buying from their local farmer, they're buying from the grocery store, right? And so the jump between buying from your local farmer as opposed to the grocery store, when you cook that meat, when I cooked that longhorn cattle from the Eastern Tennessee farm,
right,
there was no fat in it. It was very lean meat. And people aren't used to that, right? And it tastes a lot different. We've trained our palates in America to the store-bought, filled with additives and all sorts of stuff meat, right? And so, but trust me, you want to check out your local farmer's beef. If they're raising healthy cattle,
it doesn't compare to the stuff in the store.
Well, we get it's interesting. We give a lot of meat away.
Yeah.
We give primarily ground beef. We go to farmers. There's a local farmers market, and to introduce our meat to people, we go and we sell meat there, but mainly we're just trying to introduce people to what we're doing, and so we give a lot of meat away, and they come back and they say, that's the best we've ever eaten. I mean, that's just really, really good.
Yeah.
We say, yeah, we know, and we wanted to share it with you.
Yeah. Well, I can attest to that. We had it in our chili last night.
Okay.
Y'all gave us that ground beef.
Yeah.
We put it in the Instapot, made a little chili. It was amazing. So
it's really good. The other thing is, now most cattlemen are going to raise their cattle, and they're not going to process for probably maybe a year or two. I mean, depending on whether they grass feed or whether they grain feed or whatever. Mm-hmm. We don't process an animal before 36 months have passed. And so our processing date is going to be somewhere between, at a minimum, 36 months to up to 5 years. That is a very expensive way of raising beef cattle. But when you talk about marbleization, I'll show you, and we have on our website, some of our cuts of beef, and I think will surprise you with the marbleization that we get by taking the extra time to let them graze on grass.
So marbleization is done through time?
Yeah, I mean, they add fat after it. They don't mature for the first until after 2 years.
Got it.
Then after that, they have time to start adding fat.
Got it.
And they start packing in the fat and the muscle and so forth, and that's what tenderizes them. This has 2 brands. That's the brand I started with, and then I decided it was too complicated. I couldn't read it. I mean, I literally couldn't tell you how to read that brand.
Yeah.
I came up with it when I was practicing law, and it was just too complicated.
Right.
You know, and so that's what compelled me to go to the Lazy C Bar Tea brand.
Like that.
And so
That's my new hat right here. Here we go.
you know,
Now the question is, Bruce,
yeah,
can I wear it backwards?
sure. When you go someplace, it says registered Pineywoods.
You may have to throw that on the ground and stomp on it a couple of times before it's ready.
I got it.
Yeah.
Look at that. Here we go.
All right.
Hold it up. Hold the camera right here.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're good. Outfitted. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love it.
We're gonna go in and
I'll go to Oak Grove.
we're gonna go in the Oak Grove
Right.
and
Talk about Pineywoods.
talk about Pineywoods.
So yesterday y'all shared some really cool information with me about the Pinewood breed, went into some of the history, and so let's talk about that a little bit, because guys, this stuff is fascinating. Where these where this breed came from, how old they are, all that stuff was super interesting to me.
Well, number one, let me just at the outset just say, my Spanish and my Spanish pronunciation is really bad.
It's really good.
So forgive me. I found this breed. We had looked at a number of breeds, and nothing really took us.
Charlie's making sure whatever you say is the right information.
Yes, is accurate
I'll
information.
try to. You keep me straight.
He will fact check everything.
Okay, and so, but I got guided to the American Livestock Conservancy, and their headquarters are in Pittsboro, North Carolina, which is about 20 minutes from where we are right now.
Yeah.
And we went over and talked to them. I had looked at a number of other breeds, and I just didn't get excited about them. And I knew I didn't want Angus, primarily because, number one, they were ubiquitous. Everybody had Angus. And number two, they were bigger animals and everybody had them.
And they all look the same.
And they all looked the same. And we've got a small farm, and we were looking for a smaller animal. And so when we talked to them, and they said, well, you ought to look at Pineywoods. I'd never heard of them, like everybody else, particularly on the East Coast. We had never heard of them. And so they gave us some information on where someone we could call and talk to about them. They were in Mississippi. And so I called the person that they gave me, his phone number and so forth, and talked on the phone about it and made arrangements to go to Mississippi and meet him and talk to him and see the animals. And we went and spent 2.5 days, I guess, in Mississippi.
Yep.
Looking at his herd. He had at that time, he probably had, I don't know, 300, 350, whatever it was. And he also had a good friend who was known for his bulls, about 40 miles from the person that we were going to see, his livestock. And the individual who had the bulls and was known for his bulls had already picked one out for us, which was really kind of him, but we weren't quite ready for that move, and told him that we were just still looking, trying to figure out what we were doing. And so we came back empty-handed. We didn't have our fencing done and all of the things that we needed to do. So we took the winter. That was in the fall, and we took the winter to get things arranged and fencing up and all, and make a decision. And
well, and I think we started reading about Pineywoods cattle, and where they came from, and how they got here.
And we got intrigued because this is an interesting animal from a heritage standpoint, and I think we got caught up in the history of them. These are, and forgive me, I'm gonna butcher this. These are Oyo, C-R-I.
Can you do it?
I had it until he said that,
Okay.
and now I lost it.
Okay.
Great. You got it, Michaela? Crayola?
It's close, Michaela, very close.
But basically, that really means that they were the common cattle close to the dock. That's the literal kind of interpretation of what
Common
they were.
cattle close to the dock?
Yeah.
In
Dock
Spain,
as in...
in Spain,
Oh.
waterfront.
The
Got it.
waterfront, the place where they had to load those sailing ships in the late 1400s.
Wow.
And so they put on those boats horses, sheep, cattle, goats, pigs,
Chickens.
whatever they were putting on to take the trip to the Caribbean.
And so they weren't special cattle. I mean, they were whatever, the scrawniest things that were down at the docks.
They were going to make the trip
ship.
and
Wow.
survive it.
Yeah.
That's what they put. And I showed you a book on those cattle. There are all kinds of different herds here that came out of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they came to the Caribbean, they decided to start exploring north of the Caribbean islands and went to Florida and loaded the boats up with what they had brought from Spain to the Caribbean, and took those animals, loaded them, some of them, their progeny and so forth, and loaded them up and took them up to Florida and offloaded them up there. And those cattle became known as Florida cracker cattle, because the caballeros, the Spanish cowboys, used whips and cracked whips over the cattle to move them. They didn't hit the cattle with the whips. They didn't whip the cattle to move them. They cracked those whips over them to move them. And we do basically the same thing with a bucket of alfalfa pellets. We just shake that in front of them, and they'll follow us anywhere.
Yeah.
And then, whether it was Cortez or De Soto or who, I don't remember, started exploring around the Florida Panhandle to western, what is now Georgia and Alabama and so forth, and started exploring and moving livestock with them in their exploration through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and East Texas. And if I forgot somebody,
No, you got them all.
and then eventually the Spanish explorers get driven out, and they leave their livestock behind. And I think the most important thing to me, maybe not to others, and people who are more knowledgeable than I am about it, but these cattle, as well as the goats and sheep and so forth that were in the piney woods of the lower South, were left behind. And there were no pioneers there. There were Indians there. And for 400 years, these cattle went feral. And to me, that's very, very significant. I'm not sure of any other domestic breed that got left alone by humans from a breeding standpoint and all of that for a period of 400 years where they were in control of their own futures. And I just happen to believe that a lot of undesirable traits had an opportunity to work their way out of the breed.
Interesting.
These are tough animals. These are strong animals. They have really thick hides, and they handle weather and conditions and so forth that they're confronted with really, really well.
You had talked about the difference. I forgot what y'all said the other day, but the difference between Pineywoods in certain areas as opposed to Angus in certain areas, right? And so share on some of that a little bit, just the way, how industrious they are.
I mentioned to you that I had talked to my vet who raised Angus. When the first time that he had seen him, he had never heard of a Pineywoods cow, and he was out, and I stopped him. I think I told you I stopped him at the gate, and I introduced myself. I'd called him up to just evaluate I didn't know anything. I was lucky to know that they had 4 hooves, and
But you knew the north and the south end of a cow, so that was good.
that I did. That end I knew that wasn't the place to stand.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
so, so I stopped him as he was driving in, and I said, you just have to understand, I know nothing. I'm relying on you to start educating me because I know zip.
Yeah.
So he was here for, he'd been here for about a half an hour to an hour or whatever, probably longer than an hour.
In the middle of the summer, as I recall.
In the middle of the summer. Hot, sun's out, baking in the, and he was, had another one in the chute and was going over it, and I interrupted him as I was prone to do, and said, "So what do you think?" And he said, "Well, I know one thing." He said, "Your cattle are out in the middle of that pasture in the full sun, hotter than blank day,
Yeah.
and they're grazing. And I can tell you right now, my cattle are back in on my farm, and they're under a tree laying down somewhere. They ain't grazing."
Their hides are so thick. The few snowstorms we've had since we got the cattle, Pete has, 2 inches of snow across his back and it's not melting.
Wow.
I mean, he's just walking around with a snowbank on his back.
That was one of the things that we noticed early, because we had some pretty good snowstorms come through. And what she said is it covered up we only had this first paddock available at that time. We had a hay bale up by the wood's edge up there, but we had some troughs here that we put out alfalfa pellets and stuff. And he came over, and he had literally probably 1.5 to 2 inches of snow on his back that never broke while he was walking over, and it just didn't bother him. He didn't think a thing of it.
Wow.
So, and I know that everybody's got stories, and Angus do the same thing, and everybody else, but they are tough, and they're just a very solid breed that adapts easily to our conditions, and particularly in the hot part of the summer, they're still out grazing. They're tough.
Wow, amazing, Bruce. Thank you so much for having us out. This has been inspiring, just hearing your story, and I mean, how you started at 60 years old, something like this, and today 80 years old, still rocking and going strong. It's amazing to see. So thank you so much. If you want to check them out, they have a website. It's ChatCo Cattle Company. Is that right?
Yeah, it's ChatCoCattle.com.
Okay. ChatCoCattle.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. You can check them out. And also, if you want some of their meat and you're in the area,
Yeah.
come check them out. Y'all at farmers markets?
We're at a local farmers market over in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
over at Mosaic, and but we're probably going to expand that. We're trying to figure that out right now. We
Okay.
sell breeding stock and we sell meat,
Okay, that's right.
and
Yeah.
we sell out of our freezers here. We basically tell people come shop our freezers. They can come and go through our freezers and find what they didn't know they wanted.
So stop buying from your grocery store, buy from your local farmer. These are real stories, real passion, real blood, sweat, and tears is put into these cows. I mean, there's a story behind all of this. So go find a local farmer, support them. Just like these guys out here, there's a lot of people, a lot of folks out there doing an awesome work in this nation. And these are the stories that we love to hear. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Bruce.
welcome.
It's been amazing.
Come on out again. You know.